Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. We are back from the brief hiatus. We were stuck in event mode for, I feel like, 3 months now. But, as always, in the studio with me today is the wonderful, incredible Mr. Eric J. Moore.
Glad to be with you, Matthew. We've spent a lot of time together actually in person lately because we've had.
I feel like I've introed you like 6 times in the past 2 months. I've been practicing. That was a good one. I like that one. Put that in my Rolodex.
We had quite a few events, especially our amazing leadership retreat, and which was gigantic. And so it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys being patient with us as we took a little hiatus from the podcast, but here we are back. And I'm back wearing some pretty unique footwear today.
Yes, indeed. I would unique is a great word for it.
So I lost a bet. Part of the bet was I have to go on the Dental Wealth Podcast and I have to wear these shoes during the podcast, and then I have to talk about them. And so I am wearing the ugliest shoe ever made, which is called a Croc. And I've always so the team gives me crap because I'm always just dogging Crocs. And I've always dogged them. I'm like, you'll never see me in a pair of Crocs ever. And I've been so adamant about it that they made a bet. I thought Tennessee was going to beat Georgia. It was a football bet. And I confidently said Tennessee would beat Georgia, and David put his beard on the line and he said he would shave his beard off if Georgia lost, and I put my feet on the line and wearing these horrible shoes. Mm-hmm. And so I am wearing today so the team got to pick them out. I am wearing you probably won't be able to see them. Maybe we'll catch this just here. I'll take one off so you can see it in this camera so that you can. I think you got. Let's see how.
And we'll have Reese take a picture of them and have that slide in. So if you watch us on YouTube, you'll be able to get a really good image of it.
That's right. You got to see this on YouTube because it's just absolutely ridiculous of a Croc. And they're
we can call it a rave Croc.
It's pretty bad. And so but it does have the little fuzzy inside of it. So while my feet look horrendous in these shoes, I am comfortable. It's a cold day here in Atlanta.
It's perfect for this time of year, right before the holidays. Snuggie.
We need a little fireplace. I won't wear them after today, that I promise you.
I think the significance of it's hilarious because I know you've always said you'd never wear a pair of Crocs. And then those of you that don't know, we've never seen David without a beard. And David has small children and they have never seen him without a beard. So I've seen those videos online where the dad shaves his beard for the first time. The kids don't recognize him. That's what we're really going for. But unfortunately, Mr. Moore, yes,
he's wearing Crocs. So I've got these. You'll have to go on YouTube and check these things out. They're pretty crazy, but
yes, it was three-piece suit and Crocs. It was
with little charms, by the way, on them. So they didn't leave out the unicorn charm and the gumball machine charm and a few others on there. So had a little fun.
We had to class it up a little bit.
Team had to have a little fun with that. So that's good today. And so I feel a little ridiculous, but it's all good. It's all part of the process, my friend. It's all fun. It's all fun and games until you lose the bet. So I lost the bet. So
it was good team camaraderie coming up with the stipulations for it. I think, ultimately we were having a lot of fun with coming up with a creative bet. And, when you look back on it, I think ultimately it's just a fun thing to do with the team sometimes. And I think, sometimes you get so caught up with the day-to-day activities of work and business. And, part of what we did for the leadership retreat was simply just go have fun. Don't be so stressed out about the business and getting things done by the end of the year. Let's just come, decompress, have a great time, learn about leadership and motivational things, and really just work on ourselves for a change. And I think, you know, that's like kind of the perfect segue for it. It was a fun thing for us to do. And I think, you know, all the team members were reaching out this week and last week, like I think every team member sent you a pair of Crocs that they would like for you to buy. And we settled on that one finally, but it was a lot of fun. It was a great segue, like us to even just for the leadership retreat, just, you know, having some fun, getting to know the team members and just everyone having their say in something it was unique to see.
You know, that the retreat was, you know, we've received, I don't even know how many messages, text messages, about the life change, the impact, you know, that was where originally the conversation started at Tower Leadership, which was, hey, what if we built a company around this idea of creating phenomenal leaders? And because we are really strong on business, we are really strong on strategy, we're strong on KPIs and OKRs and accounting and finance and all the things we're great at. But it was really built out around this idea of, you know, one of the things that is lacking tremendously is true leadership. And we don't know, oftentimes people know when they feel leadership, but they don't know how to actually figure out what it is. And so at the leadership retreat, we brought in phenomenal speakers. We brought in, I mean, just powerhouse speakers. I spoke a little bit, and we had amazing MCs and Shad and Brian from Tiny Rhino, and the entire thing was phenomenal. And you know, to see that many, you know, team members have never been to anything like that, which is so cool. And the doctors bring their leaders, and you know, it's tears, it's laughter, it's games, it's impact, it's looking at life. I mean, because they're having a conversation they never had before. And I would argue that's where most practices don't have. We get back into the Monday and there's really a lack of leadership. There's a lack of, because I always have this philosophy, like if you help people get what they want, they'll help you get what you want. And so we have to create leadership at a higher level within businesses. And we've got to know the why, we've got to know the purpose, we've got to know why we're doing all the things we're doing. And we get really drilled in, and we talked the second day about, we talked about, you know, really the science of leadership around how do you get results, right? How to prepare for and be resilient during certain times. And we talked a lot of strategy. And so it was just a phenomenal few days of impact. And you know, we packed the room, that's for sure. Those were gigantic ballrooms and with huge screens. I mean, I don't know what are the 30-foot screens or whatever they are. They're gigantic. Mm-hmm. And then in the room, there was something really special, which was the Bronco. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah,
the big blue beast.
the big blue beast. Yeah. So one of the things we announced this at the leadership retreat, which is fun, is, and the doctors were surprised when we told them they couldn't win the Bronco. So they were like, "What?
Like, what?" It's like as soon as you made that announcement, you hear all the doctors, and you see all the team members
just wow, yeah, right? They're like, "I can win the Bronco," and so we bought this tricked out Bronco, brand new 2022 Bronco, and the idea of it is, you know, to incentivize leaders. We're having a leadership challenge at Tower Leadership. So we're going to do a leadership challenge. And what happens is the doctors nominate leaders from within the practice who ultimately get put into this raffle next year. But you have to be nominated. So you have to be selected to come to the leadership retreat, and they have to be nominated from those doctors. And so they have to be nominated ultimately in results, economic results for the practice, and community impact, and then on ultimately extending the values and beliefs of the practice. And so there's 3 areas they get judged on. And then there's a formal process. But I think the idea, and I've said this, is like, let's go get the team involved in great leadership, and let's incentivize them to do that. Let's get them focused around a goal. And really, because you get what you measure. I've always said that you get what you measure. So let's measure leadership. And now we've built an academy, so we're really training people up to become phenomenal leaders, and we're giving them the tools, because there's a lot of tools, like to say, hey, just go be a great leader. I think we know when we feel great leadership, but how do you actually become a great leader, and what are the steps you take, and what are the tools? And so we're really investing heavily in the leadership side of business. And I can't wait to give away that Bronco next year.
I think it's probably been like one of the most asked for things from just the doctors in general, is just working on leadership. So, you had the great idea of, trying to give something away to incentivize the teams that would make them excited. I think, when we saw before we opened the door, the line of people waiting to get into the actual room itself, and we had the red carpet and people were taking pictures. And a lot of times this is, the team's first event with Tower leadership. I know a lot, like most of them had already come to like an operations mastermind, but there were some other team members that this was their first experience. And then when they see the doors open and then the events put on, I think that's, one of my favorite moments is they come with the preconceived notion that it's going to be one thing, and then they end up leaving like flying high, loving it, going to impact the practice. And then the fact that they get to have the ability to win a Bronco now, I think that even gives them even more that one little jolt to get them going into 2023. I mean, that's just seeing people's reactions were awesome.
Well, if you take now, all of a sudden you have, because there's no limit to how many people the doctor can nominate. So, if you have 5, 6, 7, 8 leaders or even more, in the practice who are all working hard and who can be nominated for this. Now imagine the practice with true intentionality towards leadership and focusing on leadership. So it's not just the doctor now trying to corral everybody and get them inspired and get them focused on it and talk about leadership. And so now it's inside the business, the team members and the leaders of the business are now incentivized to work their tail off to become the best leaders possible so they can impact the practice, impact the community, impact ultimately the results, impact values and beliefs within the practice and keep extending those. So, it's called putting your money where your mouth is, right? So it's now it's on them, right? So we at Tower, we've committed to them and we said, look, this is going to be about leadership and focusing on leadership. So it's a 12-month leadership challenge. So excited to announce that. And, man, we're already slammed for next year. we're already the Leadership Academy basically, within 5 minutes was, sold out. And then the next year's leadership retreat's already slammed. So anyhow, I think the conversation, I think we're just excited. So we keep talking about this, but I think that really it goes back down to your own business and really if you're listening to this and, so we have so many Tower leadership members that are listening to this and they're already signed up for next year. And then, but those of you who aren't, where is your leadership focus in your business and what does leadership look like? How would you know it in your business? And how are you training leadership? And how do you focus on that from a day-to-day standpoint? Because we know that if we have multiple leaders, 5, 6, 7, 8 leaders in your business who understand how to push the needle, who understand how to push the value and beliefs of the business, who understand ultimately being purpose-driven within an organization, who understand how to get results, who understand how to remedy situations, how to be resilient during difficult times. And because that's one of the things right now, people are losing people because they don't focus on leadership, because they're only focusing on a paycheck, because we haven't instilled. Now, as I'm saying, people have not instilled values and beliefs. No one knows why they're doing what they're doing except for a paycheck. And because we have not built that leadership, because we don't know our why, because there's not a critical conversation, because people are not becoming more within the practice. I always say, it's not what you're getting here. The greatest question you can ask is of any job, right? Even as an owner, is not what am I getting here, but what am I becoming here? Am I becoming a better leader? Am I becoming a better father, a mother, a better mentor? What am I becoming? And so when you take an organization and you can get people to become more within those walls, then what happens is nobody can give them $2 an hour more and they'll leave because they're becoming more. They're being challenged to become more. And I think so much of if independent dentistry especially is going to thrive, it's around a conversation of leadership.
Yes. And I think leadership, just the term in general, has kind of been diluted in a way. And a lot of people say, oh yeah, leadership is this. I think, when ultimately, I think in one of the last couple podcasts, we talked about how we really focus in on a top-down approach. And leadership is not a bottom approach. Leadership is one of the key elements to top down. If you don't have great leaders, then you just have micromanagers I just had a conversation with the doctor yesterday that she ultimately has someone that really needs to work on their leadership. They're great at what they do, but they rub the people in the organization kind of the wrong way. So it's a hard conversation to have. And ultimately, the way to solve that problem is to develop the leadership of the organization top down. So if your leadership team is successful and they have great leadership, guess what? It's going to be a trickle down effect to the bottom. Investing in your team, making sure that they have all the tools they need to become phenomenal and become better. I think objectively looking at it, it is a true top-down approach. It's not something that is easy. That's why there isn't a lot of leadership conferences or leadership consulting out there. It's because, number one, it's not as powerful as a term as, OKRs and KPIs and all these things. But objectively speaking, our best clients are the ones that are the best leaders.
Definitely.
Their business is booming and they have people lining up at the door to come into the organization. It's not because they have the best financials or they're $10 million. It's because of the leadership, and people notice it.
It's funny you say that, because it's we've said since, Matthew, you've been here since what do you say? Team member number one. So, look, when you go back to it and go, look, the people that, I've always said it for years, and we've always said it, which is, if you go take care of people and you build an awesome organization to work in, then what you will find is that people will line up at the door to come in. Well, but can I just hire a recruiter? You could, but the thing is that's not going to last. I mean, you want people to line up at your door, and leadership now, but you have to understand the science of leadership. Leadership is actually a discipline. And so that's the biggest problem is, and I agree with you, Matthew, it's become this like hoo-yah, pump you up. And well, I'm a great leader because I take my people to go get their spa day once a year, and we go get our nails done. And I took them down to the beach for a week. That's not great leadership. That's culture building, that's morale building possibly, but that's not great leadership. I cannot tell you them at times of practice taking someone on for a trip and half the team doesn't even want to go. And the other time, by the way, you guys listening know what I'm talking about. People don't even want to go sometimes. And then they come back and they'll quit in 3 weeks. It's like, because you thought the leadership was a trip, and it's not.
Yeah. And you do it once or every other year, and it's randomly planned.
Because here's the thing I try to tell people. I mean, sometimes leadership is being tough. Sometimes leadership is not trying to powder puff everybody and make them happy. Sometimes leadership, what do they say? If you want to make everyone happy, don't become a leader, go sell ice cream, right? Because sometimes leadership is lonely, because you have to be able to push through, and you have to be able to maybe let that person go, or you have to push through a difficult time, or you got to lead your team through a difficult time, or you have to be able to inspire those in those times. And so leadership is way more, but there is a science to this. And it's not just this pump you up, and you can't just read one book and go, okay, now I'll go become a phenomenal leader. It's a course, it's a training, it's a period of time. And the best practices by far are the ones with the best leaders who pour money, time, and resources into leadership. And that's why this company is called Tower Leadership, because I'm a finance guy. Like I've had all my investment licenses. I understand. I have an MBA. I've spent tons of time in finance. I'm a strategy guy. I love strategy. I love business strategy. That's like my ilk, my love, my passion is finance. And I'm telling you, strategy is important. Finance is important, but without leadership to make it all come together and happen, none of it. I mean, KPIs will fall apart. Your training that you just invested to will fall apart. People will leave. You won't have retention. Everything hinges on leadership. Great leadership, great companies are hinged on great leadership. And so you got to know what that looks like, because what we do in the lack, I always feel like, and I feel like this is true. And I remember this even in the military, but people are not trained to become great leaders. So we find ourselves on a spectrum oftentimes. So the spectrum looks something like this. And you guys listening know what I'm talking about. Okay. So we give someone a leadership position, and either they go super far to the left, And I'm not talking about the political left, by the way. So super far to the left. And so what they'll do is they'll be really jerky, right? They'll just be dominant, and they'll just be, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, take out the trash. And because they don't, right? By the way, we said that it's some parenting, by the way, too. And so what happens is that now they're in charge of somebody, so they don't know how to lead anybody, so they're just going to dominate them and tell them what they do because I'm in charge, right? Positional type leadership. And then we go to the far right, which is like the other side, which is now it's like, hey, everybody just get along and let's all have a party, and that's not leadership either, right? so
I think you see the greatest example that if you want to see this like in real time is there's a show that's been on Discovery Channel forever. It's called Undercover Boss. In the show Undercover Boss, there's always the manager, and he's either way far on the left or way far on the right where no one likes him. There's always this other team member that is ultimately controlling the ship and helping it grow. So if you want to see this kind of in action, go watch an episode of Undercover Boss. I guarantee you will see the example that Eric's pointing out here, because it is true. It's people typically go one way or the other. And sometimes the right side, I would say, someone that is leading the organization doesn't have the empowerment to do it either. I think having that conversation, part of the leadership retreat, was showing people that they have the ability to do that. Like if you invest in your leadership, we had Mark Cole, who's the CEO of John Maxwell, and he touched on this, just being a great leader will take you further in life than being good at, measuring and managing. It's all about leadership, and that's how you really grow and scale. I think a lot of times people call us when they call into the organization, and I have a conversation with them, they're trying to figure out how to scale the organization to get their time back. And they want to talk about numbers and creating this creative strategy and all of this stuff. And then I start asking about, who their C-suite is or who their executive team is, who is the leadership team, and they don't really have an answer. And, who's running the operations of the organization? This person kind of does it, but not really. She's not properly trained on this. And I can see the gray area, and I know why they're stressed out is because they don't have any leaders in the organization that are empowered, number one, or have the tools to be able to go lead that section of the business.
Patrick Lencioni said, teams that get along are not necessarily good teams. Teams that win are good teams. And what is winning? And I do think that we need to have better conversations as well, which is when I said that question is talking to team members and asking, what is winning to them? It's this interesting dynamic where we get frustrated because we're not having the economic results. And when we get the economic results, we go deal with the symptom, right? The person's not producing as much. They're not treatment planning as much. They're not showing up on time, whatever the symptom is. And then, or they're not picking up the phone correctly, or they're not instilling the training they were just trained on, and all those type things. And then we go, well, so how to fix it is we just hit the symptom. If you go into true leadership and you figure out, yes, you need processes, i.e. how to remedy in a consistent manner, because consistency is what creates great leadership, by the way. You can't change that. But if we get into the other side of this and say, we have to be able to get people to understand their why they're doing it, how to take care of them. Because I guarantee you that if you were to build an organization that instills that belief and knows their why and gets to other people's why and has a critical conversation. And even though it sounds fluffy, see, this is why organizations fail, because ultimately what ends up happening is when I even talk about this, some of you are like turning this podcast off because you're just like, yeah. Well, I'll just go back to the numbers again. My consultant told me about KPIs. Well, listen, you want to get KPIs. And by the way, we love KPIs. We love OKRs. We love ultimately creating numbers and systems. It's what we do. We coach business. But you have to go the other side of this and go, yeah, but understand that if you got a team that's focused on a purpose, that's focused on a why, and it's not just well, just give them an incentive. Or you could have a critical conversation with them and get them tuned into what they're trying to, because what happens is if you build an organization that's trying to figure that out and actually take care of people and building an organization of significance and importance, what ends up happening is those people go to work and they're like, they're inspired to get the KPI because they know ultimately how it impacts them. They know how ultimately growing the practice impacts them and their future and their kids and their legacy. And we have a different conversation. Now, I know right away, some of you are going, well, I can't have that conversation. I know leadership's hard. If it was easy, man, everybody would do it. But I'm going to tell you now, the best practices have great leadership. And this is a fundamental. We just watched FTX collapse, right? What is FTX collapse? You're talking about a crypto exchange worth billions of dollars. Why? Lack of leadership. That's why it collapsed. It wasn't economic. It was collapsed because of a lack of leadership. Enron collapsed because of a lack of leadership. Lehman Brothers collapsed because of a lack of leadership. GM needed a giant bailout because of lack of leadership. It's not because of the economics. It's because the economics failed because of a lack of leadership. And the economic was the symptom that happened out of a lack of leadership. And we could go into Arthur Andersen. We could keep, by the way, I'm really pulling some cobwebs off some of these stories. But, that's the whole point is the business is littered, and in the dental world too, and the medical world, littered with companies who never invested in leadership because the management said, this is too soft. This is too hokey. But what ends up happening, by the way, I don't believe in soft leadership teaching. I believe that we need to talk about the art, which is about why we exist. It is about inspiring people. And we also need to talk about the science of leadership, which is getting results, which is being consistent in remedy. It is understanding resilience and how to get through difficult times, and on and on and on, because you've got to have a plan in place. Your leadership has to have a plan in place. What happens if the market goes down next year in a recession? Well, we're training leaders to be able to handle that. Are you? When we start thinking about, ultimately speaking, what are the other things that can happen? Inflation goes up. How are we dealing with that? What is our plan? What if we lose 2 surgeons? We've got to be able to already have a team of leaders that when that stuff happens, they don't panic and bail. They already were trained up to lead through a difficult time. The United States military does an amazing job of this, which is, train as you fight, fight as you train. Hey, get ready because stuff can happen. And so we need, in this industry, to do a much better job of training leaders. And this company was founded on this idea of, we're going to be the ones to do that because no one's having the conversation that needs to be had. Why aren't they having it? Because this stuff's hard. It's complex. You got to dig deep, but it can't just be the leadership stuff. And I'm not talking about, the leadership stuff gets confused with the people that go, wow, you got to make a wow experience. And I'm not knocking anybody if that's your jam, if you're all into that part of the business. I'm not, look, there's something to that too, but that's not leadership, right? That's just trying to create a better experience for a patient. That's not leadership. So leadership is a completely different discipline. And when we create great leadership within businesses, then watch what happens to retention, watch what happens to revenue, watch what happens to the phones, watch what happens to case acceptance, watch what happens. And we could just keep going on and on and on. It all comes from leadership. And, so much so, I believe in this so much. That's why we went out and we bought a Bronco that, by the way, they're putting a premium on these things these days. We didn't buy the cheap one either. We bought the best they had. And we're because we know how much it'll impact these businesses, watching these leaders within the practice rise. And I'm going to give them an incentive to do that. And when they do that, watch what happens to 2023. Just like when we said in this podcast, if you go back and look at the during COVID times, we said, double down on marketing. Now's the time to double down on marketing. We said, if you were ever going to double down now, we have people who listened to that podcast that day and now are 3-4 times as big because they followed that advice. The same advice I'm giving you right this moment, which is if you're when going into 2023, you better double down on leadership because you're going to need it during this upcoming time.
And I think, when we look at it and we say, all this stuff that could potentially happen next year, I think, when a lot of people this year, I feel like the biggest issue has been hiring. It's been, I can't find a hygienist or I can't find a front desk people. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, it's been hard to find people. I think next year will present new challenges. But, when someone has the ability to say, yeah, I work for this practice and the doctor's investing in me to work on my leadership, people are going to wonder why am I not getting that at my business? Why, I wish I had the ability to do that. Like the doctor's willing to do that for me. That's awesome. And you'll start having more and more and more people knocking on your door saying, hey, how do I get in this? I heard you're doing a lot of investing in the team. You're growing them as leaders, as people. You're sending them to operations. You're sending them all these things. This is awesome. I haven't experienced this before. And I think the unique thing about leadership, just development in general, it's not only going to affect the business, but it's going to affect their personal life as well. They'll start coming into the office differently. They'll start, their family will start being on board with more things, and it'll completely turn away, like just from a personal side as well, their entire life around, and it'll start it's a trickle down effect. And then when you originally came up with the idea for Tower Leadership was impact. How can we go impact as many lives as possible? And by creating more leaders in the marketplace, the trickle down effect is going to be exponential. We'll never truly see what the adverse effects of that is, but it does, it gets us up at night. It gets us up in the morning and gets the team going. And they know that, everything that we put into this and helping people become better leaders will ultimately affect the business, but it'll affect a lot of other people outside of the business too.
I love that idea that you brought that up, the ripple effect, because, it's funny, a doctor came up to me and he goes, man, the ripple effect of this is going to be so profound. Right. And I was like, isn't that true? I mean, it is. The ripple effect is like, I'm talking about, like, we have had more people comment to us. I mean, people in the industry have reached out to us after watching some of the clips on the leadership routine. They're like, holy crap. Like, by the way, we're going to release a clip next week on just a little small part of it. We're talking about 2 full days. We'll release a little bit next week. But this is we're creating a movement within the industry, which is, if independent dentistry is going to thrive in the future, how does it thrive? What does it take? Yes, it's going to need to understand C-suite. It needs to understand net present value, internal rates of return, investment of capital, debt versus equity. It's going to understand experience, and it's going to understand KPIs and accounting and balance sheets and cash flow statements, and all those things are true. But the great differentiator, because the DSOs already know, by the way, how to do all those things, but what they won't invest in is leadership. What they won't be able to do on scale is to create leaders. I'm telling you flat out, by creating leaders on scale, not just hiring somebody, but creating leaders on scale, it's literally how you're going to dominate the marketplace. And at Tower Leadership, we're creating the best of the best. Why we're so tough to let people in. We don't want people coming into Tower who aren't. And we've gotten tougher. I mean, I'll be honest with you, those of you who don't know at this point, like, it's really tough to get in the doors. And we've done that on purpose. In the last 12 months, we've literally eliminated almost every single person we didn't want to work with. And we've made it really tough to get in. Why? Because you only have so much time and energy. And we want to work on people who want to impact the industry, and we want to work with people who want to impact their communities and impact their team. And yes, they'll make a whole lot of money in the process, don't get me wrong, and they're killing it. They're making numbers that are just insane, but it's not about that. And when if you want just that, go listen to a different podcast, because here's the thing you got to understand is, like, the future is much more sophisticated than you can realize. And you've got to know how to differentiate. I'm talking about true business strategy, and it's not just vertical and horizontal differentiation. And that's a huge piece of it, but you got to look at your business model and find out what makes you unique. And the great businesses, and why we're being so tough, is because we're going to pour time and energy only into the people who truly want to do this, and to not just get most consulting firms, you just cut them a check and they'll take you. They'll take your money, but we don't want to build that. We want to continue to build, because we've already got a great organization, but continue to build an organization of the top leaders in the industry, only the best of the best, the people who are willing and committed to building phenomenal organizations. And it always starts with leadership.
It feels good to be back.
Bam, man. Yeah.
It feels good to be back in the studio. I think, we try to get these out to you guys as often as possible. Every time Eric and I just get in a flow. We don't come into this with a script. We don't come into this with preconceived topics to talk about. We just kind of go with it. We want it to be authentic for you guys. So, I mean, it's been great.
I got to think about one thing, it was like a year and a half ago or so. We were about the 100th episode. And, we were talking about people coming into Tower Leadership, and now I'm like thinking, like, some of those people sit on the sidelines. They're like, well, they might actually charge me money. And they sit on the sidelines, and now you might not be able to get in. And I say that in all sincerity. I don't mean that as some kind of a tactic. I really just mean, like, if you're ready to be challenged, are you ready? I mean, maybe a better thing to say is, are you ready to be challenged? Are you ready to really, truly impact your family, to move your leadership up, to move your skill sets up, to get your team to do the same, to move what kind of people they are. Like, period. Like, where are you committed to? Is it, what is your main focus in life? What are those values that you hold true? Why do you do what you do? Like, do you know? I mean, think about that for a second. Why do you do what you do? Why do you go and deal with patients every day? Why do you get out of bed? Why do you deal with the headaches of running a business? Entrepreneurship is hard as hell. So why are you doing all this? What's the purpose of it? And what's your team's purpose? Why are they there? Why are they with you? What makes your, well, we have a great experience. No, I want you to be specific. Like, what makes your business so dynamic? And if you were to drop revenues tomorrow 40%, what would ultimately happen to your business? And you got to figure out the purpose and why of your organization. When you do that, and then you start training true leadership around some of the things I was talking about, and why we get the results, and why we have to be resilient, and why we can have to remedy in a consistent manner, and all the things we have to do. When we get there, what ends up happening is we truly transform organizations and we make them unique. And then what ends up happening, just like we've done at Tower, the same thing happens to your organization, where you're very different. Like, you got some people lining up that you're very, very strategic, who you let in your doors to be on your team. And that you won't just take any hygienist. You won't just take any doctor. They've got to meet the requirements of your organization. They have to be purpose driven. They have to be leaders. They have to want to have the right values. They actually, I mean, all these things start to happen, and you're like, wow, you wake up one day and you're like, how did I create this brilliant organization? Because you create an organization of leaders. And what ends up happening is, when somebody walks in those doors that's not part of that, and they're not consistent with your values and beliefs, the team will push them out anyhow. And you wake up one day and you're like, well, now I can actually pull back. Why? Because you have a whole team of people who are fighting for the same purpose. And that's what makes organizations great.
Great organizations, you can tell. You can see them from a mile away. They have great leadership in place. They have process, and they're humble. They're coachable. They're like, all right, just tell me what to do now. I think ultimately, one of the reasons why, congratulations again, if she is listening, to Dr. Johnson for winning Practice of the Year. Part of the reason why she, won Practice of the Year was simply because of her leadership. I mean, she took a practice on 24 months ago and is just crushing it. Crazy. And we got the ability this time to meet her entire team again, and they're all just blown away about what she's willing to do for them, how she's taken the organization, and how involved they are. And it was our honor to give it to Dr. Johnson because of the leadership she's shown. And that's the type of people that are being attracted to our leadership. And just like you said, we're being selective on who we bring in, because we want everyone to be surrounded by great leaders.
Yeah.
It's ultimately, who the one that is lacking in the leadership is when they come into the room, and we're doing our best to make sure that's there. And you touched on a little bit for next week, just so you guys are aware, is the special clip that's going to be the podcast. We're going to show you guys a clip from one of Eric's presentations from the leadership retreat, just to show you kind of what true leadership looks like and how to develop those things and what concepts to focus on. So there's going to be a full little clip for next week's podcast. So make sure you tune in, and I would encourage you guys to watch it on YouTube. So go on YouTube, subscribe, so you get the notification of when it's going to be launched. I know it's going to be the holiday season. Thanksgiving's coming up. It's almost turkey time. So it's a great way to kind of catapult you into finishing the year strong. Yeah. So make sure you guys follow. Like, go ahead, subscribe right now. Take out your phone, subscribe, so you guys get the notification when that podcast is going to be up. I know we've been going forever. I think we can talk about leadership all day, but we ultimately, you guys got to get to it. You got a couple weeks, busy season ahead, people coming home from the holidays, trying to get in last second dental appointments, insurance is ending. So make sure you guys get that done. Like, subscribe. Mr. Morin, thank you always for coming into the studio.
With my Crocs on, man. With my Crocs on.
Make sure you watch this on YouTube if you want to get a little glimpse at the spectacular Crocs he's got on. And hopefully, maybe Tennessee will redeem themselves in the college football playoffs if they get there. So maybe there'll be part 2 of this series. We'll see.
Maybe I can make the bet again, right? Well,
yeah.
But if I had to wear Crocs to lose the bet, I don't know what if I want to lose it, what I would have to lose it the next time. So
double down.
Guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.